Hi, everyone. I am Lois from Fitness Knocking. We are here today talking about not sweating the small stuff. And I'm really excited because I have Jen Mac and Lois with me today. And she's going to be talking with us about how to gain some perspective. So before we get started, I want to let you know that we have some cool things coming up. Tomorrow is our grand virtual reopening. It is online, and if you want to drop in for a couple seconds, I'll put some info in the chat so you can register for that. It's from 2 to 5:30. We're going to have lots of prizes and cool and fun things going on for that. And then we also am participating in a group called Roots and Wings, and they work with young people who have aged out of foster care. And what I love about them is that they give these young people steps in education to help move them forward. And in this day and age, we need everything that we can possibly get. So we are doing a holiday wish list items for them on this website. So if you'd like, I'll drop that into the chat too. And if you'd like to participate in helping us help them, please do that. So without further ado, we have today with us, Jen. How are you? How are things going?
Good. I'm great, Lois. How are you today?
I am really, really good. I'm so excited to hear what you have to say today about not sweating and stop sweating the small stuff. Because truthfully, in today's day and age, we really need to have some perspective. And I really love what you have to say. So for those of you that don't know Jen is a teacher, she's a trainer, she's a coach, and she's been leading her own personal development programs as well as one-on-one coaching for almost 20 years. And she works with all different types of aspiring leaders who want to do better and get their full potential out there. So Jen, oh my goodness, thank you again so much for coming today.
You're very welcome. I love what I do, and it's always nice connecting with other like-minded, amazing women doing wonderful things. So thank you for asking me.
Well, my pleasure. My pleasure. It's so great to have you. So, we're such energetic beings, and I know that the word emotion comes from energy in motion. You have a story that I'd love for you to share with my audience about this young person in the park and how we're conditioned. So will you share with us that story, please?
Yeah, no. So, I mean, one of the things I like to always talk about is being kind to ourselves. And I think as we grow older, we sometimes are not so kind to ourselves. And one of those ways I think we can sometimes not be so gracious with ourselves day in and day out is just allowing ourselves to feel our feelings, right? So emotions, like you said, is energy in motion. Their emotions are just meant to be experienced, felt, and move through our body. And so when you see a child, they naturally do this because they haven't been conditioned yet or taught or told it's wrong to feel this or don't behave that way. So, when you see a child in the park, for example, 1 minute they're playing and they're laughing and giggling, and then all of a sudden they wipe out on the ground, they skin their knee, and they're in incredible pain. They let out a scream, or they cry, or they allow themselves to feel that pain or that sadness. And then what happens next with the child, right? Immediately, like 3-4 minutes later, they pick themselves up, they dust themselves off, and they run around and start playing again. And so it's very healthy emotionally because they're letting themselves have their feeling and not stuffing it. And then able to move on. So they don't have all this accumulated, emotional tension that I think a lot of us have. And so I think we can learn from children,
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so true. There's a great poet. His name is Robert Frost. And he says the only way out of your emotions is through them. And a lot of us, I know I do it. I know a lot of adults that do it. We oftentimes are stuffing our emotions. We're dropping them down, and it's really hard to find perspective when we're stuck.
Yeah. And I think, I always try to differentiate for people, you can acknowledge you're having a feeling, and that in itself is powerful enough, knowing maybe after work today, because it's not the appropriate time to express it or let it rip, I can go kickbox for an hour or take my dog for an extra long walk. But to just give yourself that permission to acknowledge you're feeling something, and at the next right appropriate time, let it out. And I think that is the key then to being able to do a variety of other things that help you then gain a larger perspective in moment-to-moment situations that normally trip us up.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So when we look at perspective, I watched this documentary and I shared this with you earlier today. It's on Netflix and it's basically, my gosh, his name is escaping me right now.
Bill Gates, I think you
Bill
were.
Gates, thank you. I apologize.
Bill.
Yeah. Okay. So my good friend Bill. Now, so he has this documentary on Netflix, and it puts so much into perspective because he has the first one, he talks about water and sanitation and something that we in this society take so much for granted. I mean, it's burned into my memory now to see the way that a lot of people live. And this is in 2020. This is not 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. This is right now. We are not looking at the big picture here. We're sweating the stupid small stuff. Oh, my internet was out, or oh, I got stuck in traffic, or oh, I couldn't do this or couldn't do that. Like perspective, we're many of us, and me included, I do this too. So, if you're doing this, don't worry about it. I'm doing it too. We need to look at perspective more often, look at that big picture. So how do you get people to be more like resilient and charged up, look at the big picture?
Yeah, well, I think it's a skill set like anything that we can further develop or we can hone within ourselves. So you're in fitness, right, Lois? So when you're working with a client and a client wants to get definition in their arm, right, you're going to work certain muscles, the biceps, the triceps, the deltoids, and do lifts. And it's not going to change overnight, right? However, after 30, 60, 90 days, you're going to start to see some definition because you're working that muscle over and over again. Well, it's the same thing with our minds, our mindset. Having the ability to have a more flexible mindset versus a fixated mindset is a muscle we can work day in and day out. And I think most people get very fixated on the little things because you're focused and you remain focused on your life versus have a practice, just like working out, of every day at a certain time choosing to step back and look at the bigger picture of your life. So you were mentioning the Bill Gates documentary, and don't quote me on the exact calculation. I believe it was cited through the UN in recent years. However, I believe it's like there are around 9 billion of us people on the planet, and I believe it's close to half that population, 4.5 billion people, don't even have running water. Like, so to think about that, right? Like, we take that for granted mostly here in the US, like to turn a faucet and have running water when most people don't even have that. And so when you have that perspective, when you see the bigger picture of like, what are most people's challenges today? Well, most people are just maybe struggling to get access to clean, fresh, safe drinking water for their children, right? Or and I think it's like another less percentage of people don't have safely managed sanitation facilities. That's what you were talking about, right? So we take that for granted, like a toilet. We could go anywhere, right? Pretty much. So when you step back and you look at the bigger picture of most people's challenges around the globe, suddenly your internet going down doesn't seem so big. It goes from maybe this big to this big. However, you have to have that ability to step out of yourself and your life and have a willingness to want to look at the larger picture, right, to begin to be able to maneuver that in your mind. Otherwise, if we're fixated on just what's going on in our own lives, everything feels huge, right?
Totally. Totally. And I think building resiliency and educating yourself. I mean, taking the little things for granted, like being able to take a hot shower. I mean, the morning after I watched that documentary about 3 days ago, and it just happened to come across my feed. And I was like, oh, that looks interesting. I'd love to learn about his life. So let's watch it. And I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea how bad it is. And if we don't know, how can we be a part of the solution?
Right. So not to beat ourselves up. I think that's
absolutely.
I think that's the next thing most people do, right? Again, like I always say, put the stick down, be kind to yourself. When we know better, Maya Angelou said, we do better, right?
Right.
So now that you have that awareness, go, oh, that's helpful. How can I implement it? And I think another great way to start your day is to realize, every day there's hundreds of little things that are going right for us all the time. We just don't notice them because we take them for granted.
Right.
So, when you wake up, your heat's going, or your AC's going, or your blankies are warm, or your coffee maker's working, or, a variety of things. And so when one thing goes not right, like a stain on my favorite top that I wanted to wear today, it feels monumental because you're not recognizing how many things have already gone in your favor. And if you have that willingness to just step back and say, you know what, let me take a look. Let me take 2 minutes before I get out of bed to think about everything that I have, everything that's working well. Then when life happens, as it does for all of us, and that one or two snafus happen in that day, they're not such a big deal. You've got perspective. Right. And if we don't have perspective, Lois, I think what happens is we have that ripple effect, right? Where we start to like make a mountain out of a molehill. So the smallest thing then perpetuates the next thing, and we get caught on that. But that is resilience. Like I always say, resilience is like, a good way to think of it is like your phone, the ability to how charged up, how much capacity you have to bounce back or adapt from things, how much energy. And so that's a way to energize yourself, just like sleep or eating well or exercising, to say, you know what, I'm going to sit in bed for 2 minutes before I start my day, and I'm going to think about everything that's working in my life.
Right.
That I don't even notice because I take it for granted, or everything I'm grateful for.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Keep charging up your emotional toolbox. And it's like, in my opinion, looking forward in your life to seeing what you really want to happen. Like if you want your day, one little thing trips you up in the morning, and if you let that continue on instead of pausing for a second. I love how you said, come out and look out here, bring it out to the satellite view. Because in the big picture of your life, it's probably such a small thing that, even right now, if you look at the big picture of COVID-19 in our world, right? It's such a big, it's on the news. It's constantly, everybody talks about it constantly, and it's emotionally draining. But if you think about what you do have, bringing that perspective back, keeping that toolbox. I love how you said gratitude list. What else do you use in your toolbox?
Oh, I've got a lot of things. I like to do something I call future journaling, sometimes, where I just kind of write out the next stage or chapter of my life, envision what it looks like, maybe what time I'm waking up, how I feel. Gratitude lists are wonderful. Again, a similar practice to gratitude, looking for scanning your environment for all the little things that are working all the time on your behalf, but you take them for granted, like hot running water or a shower or your coffee. It's the little things, And so it's also, I just want to say, it's finding that balance, which is different for all of us, because we don't want to like negate even the small things that really do upset us. That's why we started off talking about emotions, right? We're giving ourselves that permission to still feel it and acknowledge it. It's just the decision, the conscious choice. I'm not going to now breathe life into that and stay stuck in that feeling. I'm going to experience it. I'm going to acknowledge I had a bad morning or a difficult day, or I'm going through challenging things, because they're very real for all of us right now. However, at the same time, to ease that up, to step back and have that willingness to look at the big picture and say, well, you know what, maybe if I do the exercise today of listing out everything working in my life, suddenly whatever's been feeling huge is going to maybe, not be so huge, and I'm going to see it in the larger scheme of things. And I think the other thing to remember too is this too shall pass. Everything does come to an end. When we're in something that is challenging, I think it always is natural and human for us to think it's going to be like this forever. And I think that's very much the feeling for a lot of people with the pandemic, like it's never going to end. And the truth is, there will come a day, whether it's tomorrow, 6 months, whenever, there will come a day where this too shall have passed, and we'll have a new chapter and a new beginning. So, to always remain optimistic, to be willing to see the bigger picture is helpful in the day-to-day navigating of our working and our living. So we have more joy in our days because we see all the blessings versus headache after headache, because we're fixated on the few things that we're kind of growing bigger because we're not willing to step back and look at all the good too.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree 100%. You have to feel the feelings first, and then you have to get through the feelings. Because if you're not through them, well, what the, they're not going to just magically go away. You have to go through them to get to the other side,
Yeah.
and then envision what you want. Yeah, I agree 100%. Wow. Thank you, Jen, so much for taking the time to come out and chat with us. You have an event coming up. Do you want to share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I always try to give back where and when I can. So seasonally, I like to do my signature talk, which is just helpful at the top of a new season. And this is not only at top of a new season, but the top of a new year, to reflect a bit and reset goals and things you'd like to achieve or shift for the better. So I have a talk coming up I think it's in late December. If you're interested, you can email us at clientcare, that's all one word. It's there on the screen, at jen-mac.com.
Cool, cool. Well, thank you again so much for coming in and supporting us today. And those of you that are watching or that have watched or watching after the fact today, please subscribe, share, comment. Let us know that you're watching. We appreciate you very much. And again, if you need help with at-home personal training or virtual personal training, or know somebody who does, please have them reach out to us. We would be happy to help them get their best life and their best future self going. And of course, if you want to support Roots and Wings, they have their holiday wish list up on Amazon. It's in the chat as well. So thanks again, Jen, for coming on today. Thank you again, everyone, for watching, and have a great rest of the day.
My pleasure.
Bye,
Thank you, Lois, for having me. Bye, everyone.